This week we delve into part 2 of Willie Pickton. If you're currently listening to this and you haven't listened to part 1, have a think about what kind of life you're living and go back and listen to it. Okay, let's go. So here we are for part 2 of Willie Pickton, the Canadian pig farmer that you actually know nothing about. I remember when I first heard this case, and I'm not taking away anything from the monster, who is Willie, and of course I'd never discredit his victims, but this case did not seem real to me. The involvement of bikies, a mother who had more hair on her chin than her head.
That's right.
Yeah. A family who were described as being rat faces, like you cannot make this up.
Yeah, and their only access to fresh water was if they lifted like a wood thing.
Yeah, and hardly showered. Well, never showered, hardly bathed. If you haven't listened to part 1, like the intro stated, then I suggest you do that and do not comment saying, meh, 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 this doesn't make sense. He also did this, this, and this. Thank you. Now, we last left you with Willie being a piece of poop, cruising downtown and luring Sandy to his home, where he would nearly kill her and then hire a PI to discredit her so she didn't show up to court, and his charges were dropped. So he got away with it, and this is why we have part 2, so let's dive right in, shall we? You ready to dive in, Dal?
Let's go.
Oh, let's go. I don't want to go. As previously mentioned, a lot of women were going missing from downtown, and not a lot of action was being taken to help these women. A lot of them were Indigenous or sex workers or both, and unfortunately some of them were addicts. Given the amount of victims this vile human being that is Willie Pickton may have come across, I mean, you don't know the number, but if you, dear listeners, know this case, you know it is close to 50 women that Willie claims to have murdered.
Sheesh.
Because each woman has her own story, I do once again highly recommend you check out Stevie Cameron's book, because she sheds light on these women who weren't even treated as people. Between 1978 and 2001, there were at least 65 women who disappeared from downtown. There were even reports done around if the missing women had been investigated properly. And surprise, surprise, measures could have been put in place to possibly stop some of this feral man's murders.
No way.
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
Same story, different day.
Yeah. So in 1996, another woman who had an unfortunate run-in with Willie, or maybe fortunate, was a woman by the name of Tracy, and she'd actually seen Willie around a lot and said that a lot of the girls knew him. His truck was hard to miss as he would cruise around downtown quite a lot. She had never dealt with Willie before, so when he pulled over one night, everything seemed okay at first. He picked her up asking for a gobby, to which she said $40. Sorry.
$40 for a gobby?
Yeah. This is 1996.
Yeah, but that's
still
a lot for a gobby.
Oh, it is? I was like, that's not enough.
I mean, maybe, I don't actually know what he looks like yet. He could have been disgusting. I probably would have asked for more, but there might be people out there listening, specifically in America or the UK, who don't know what a gobby is. For example, in the UK, gobby is someone who talks a lot. Gobbo is...
Yeah, all right. Blowjob of the penis. BJ of the penis.
With your mouth.
With your mouth-face. She had said the smell in his truck was so foul that she almost didn't get in. She went to his trailer and said how dirty it all was and that he just had clothes everywhere. After the deed was done, Willie was looking for his wallet and pulled out a knife on Tracy, saying she had stolen his wallet. She ran out, luckily, and Willie followed her with her bag and purse. He drove her back downtown, and on the way there, he decided to have a nice chat with Tracy, talking about how he loved to help working girls kick the habit, but he gave them only one chance, and if they went back to dope, then they don't deserve to live. They are useless. They are better off dead.
Well, golly.
Now, Lisa Yelds, do you remember that name? We brought her up a little bit. She kind of made friends with Willie back in part 1.
Yeah, she was his mate.
Yeah, they were friends. So she'd moved away with her kids, and Willie ended up finding a new female friend by the name of Gina Houston. She actually lived a few blocks from the farm, and he'd called her because he didn't want her to get the wrong idea about what was being written in the paper about him. It didn't take long for the two to become great friends. Gina was a single mother of 2 and was rather low on cash. She did become a private foster mother, like illegally on the DL, which is wild because there are reports that she abused her own children and that she was also doing drugs and was a prostitute. So fostering another 3 kids probably not the best idea? Question mark? Maybe?
Especially illegally.
Yeah, the illegal part too. Gina became the new Lisa, and Willie would start paying for her rent, her groceries, and even gave her cash. He didn't know that Gina was a bit of a con artist and was actually still dating a drug dealer, but she was more than happy to play friends with old Willie.
Of course.
She even went as far as bringing girls back for Willie, so she would lure women to come back to the farm with them.
What happened to like women looking out for each other?
Yeah, not if your name's Gina Houston.
I was going to say, it can't be applied to every Gina in the world.
Not
I'm
every
sure.
Gina. Sometimes they'd get a few girls to come back. However, a lot of women were starting to know who Willie Pickton was, and he was actually on the list of bad dates. I think they called it. I think that's what it was. As they connected Willie to the disappearance of their friends. So I don't want to say the prostitutes, but the ladies of the night.
The sex workers.
The sex workers. I don't know if we spoke about this in part 1, because the police weren't doing anything to keep the women safe. The gals started looking out for themselves. Mm-hmm. So they kind of, wrote lists about, bad cars or people, like watch out for these. So, at least these girls had each other's backs, but not Gina Houston.
No, dirty bitch.
Dirty bitch. September 1997, a woman by the name of Renata was working a corner in the downtown area when she came across a familiar car. It was Dave Pickton. Do you remember who Dave Pickton is?
Yeah.
What do they call him? Elmer Fudd. She asked him to pull around the corner as the police had been doing some searches nearby. He wanted to make sure to let her know that he indeed was not a police officer, which she already knew, but it was obvious that he didn't recognize her. So he pulled out his pennies to be like, see, I'm not a cop.
Cops have done that before. Do you hear about that cop who got, I believe he would, did he get, it was in America. I don't know if he got fired or he got stood down, but there was a chick who does OnlyFans, and she got pulled over by him, and then she's filming the whole thing, and then she gets him, I don't know if it was, she asked him to squeeze her boobies or whatever, and he very much did.
Oh no.
In uniform at the side of the road.
Silly man. Yeah. Silly man. He offered her $100 for a BJ, but she was like, no ma'am, you are dirty and gross. She didn't say that to him. He even offered her some drugs, but she still said no. As she started to get out of the car, he asked if she knew anyone who'd be interested, as it was actually for his brother, not for him. He didn't need to get a prostitute.
But he pulled his penis out.
Yeah, to be like, I'm not a cop. Woo, woo, woo.
For my brother.
Yeah, that's kind of messed up as well, hey. He said he was happy to even give her payment for a finder's fee. She knew just the person, a friend of hers by the name of Sherry. Sherry had owed her some money, and Dave made it out like there wouldn't be much work involved. Willie didn't really like women. Just give it a go, it'd be fine. They all headed out to the farm. When they arrived, Renata hung back with Dave as Willie walked over to greet Sherry, and they headed to his trailer. Just before they left, Sherry had turned around and said goodbye to her friend, and something just did not feel right after that.
Well, of course, because not really a spoiler alert. Didn't you say there were also rumours that he was into making smut films?
Snuff films,
Snuff films?
But it's not a spoiler at all because, she was literally saying goodbye to her. Renata would soon become a scout of sorts for Dave, finding women that were, and I quote, losers for Willie and his loser friends. Look for anyone who's more than happy to go to the farm easily. It wouldn't take Renata long before Sherry was just another name, kind of an unknown, forgotten about.
And then, of course, like what you're saying in part 1, is that if no one really cared when prostitutes went missing, unfortunately. They should have, but they didn't.
By 1998, due to the rising number of missing women, a task force was created to find out what was going on and who was actually missing. Finding out names and when they were last seen, checking in with hospitals and family members. Some of the women were found, some deceased due to drug overdoses or other complications. And even though the police were starting to get somewhere, more names would be added for each that came off. Because you think about it as well, a prostitute back then, more so I guess even now as well, they do run under different names. You know, a lot of the women, if they are on drugs and stuff like that, they're moving around a lot. Like, it'd be hard to know who's who. I even saw reports where some family didn't even know that person was missing until 5 or 6 years later. They weren't reported missing because they just moved around, you know, hardly heard from them, that they just didn't know.
That's wild to me.
That's wild to me too, because I talk to my parents every day. So it's like, if I went missing, I feel like people would know. Around this time, a tip also came through, and it was by no other than a man who worked on the Pickton farm. He started to have some suspicions because he knew that Willie was very fond of sex workers, and he even saw numerous amounts of women's clothing, ID, and purses in Willie's possession. I mean, given everything we had spoken about in part 1 with the land, burying cars, pigs, wood chippers, like, it'd be pretty easy to hide some bodies if you needed to.
Yeah.
So this employee just had bad vibes about Willie, and even noticed that some women would head to the farm and never be seen again. So Lisa Yeld also shared her concern with this employee. However, Lisa did not want to talk to the cops, so it was just kind of filed away. Nothing ever done with it because, can someone say hearsay?
Hearsay.
Hearsay.
An out-of-court statement.
So what do you think the police decided to do with a man who stabbed a prostitute that, you know, just received a phone call from one of his employees on the farm being like, hey, this guy's a bit sus, what do you think the coppers did?
Nothing.
No, well, they did, but like, they did surveillance. And after only around 2 weeks of tailing Willie, police found nothing, so they called it off. They were trying to find some evidence or maybe see him pick someone up, but obviously the surveillance failed. Police had their sights set on Willie, so they decided to check his DNA that was on hand due to the clothing from the first incident. You know, when he got caught nearly trying to kill a woman, but got away from it. Anyway, 3 bodies had been found over a period in the downtown area, so they thought they would test Willie's DNA against whatever they had found on the bodies. Strangely enough, there was no match. 2 serial killers on the loose, question mark? Preposterous. Preposterous.
Preposterous. Is scandalo.
Is scandalo. I like that word. Preposterous. That's just not right. Police didn't even want to come to terms with the fact that there was 1 serial killer, let alone 2. I think this second one may have been Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, which I guess I will have to do one time because I'm going to have to, but I don't want to, but I need to.
Crossover.
Yeah, crossover. So February 1999, Andy Bellwood came to the farm looking for some work. If you haven't caught on, it's kind of a place where people would drift to and work and stay, and Andy did end up staying for a bit. It was one night, however, that Willie asked Andy if he would like to go pick up some girls from downtown. Andy wasn't keen because it wasn't his thing, and Willie wasn't happy about this, so he started ranting about his activities and what he gets up to. Willie told Andy that he picks them up, draws them in with drugs or money. He said he then puts them on the bed, which I'm also like, you don't have a bed, it's just kind of a thing on the floor, so don't call it a bed. They do the doggy styles, and then he grabs their hands around the back, handcuffs them, and then strangles them. After that, he would take them to the barn, hang them, and gut them. Willie then stated that the pigs will eat anything, and what they don't eat can just go to the rendering plant. A few days later, Andy was beaten on the farm for, according to Willie, stealing some of his tools. But let's be real, threatening much. Now, you might be thinking, wow, Ashley, you've really jumped ahead there. Like, what's going on here? We will get into it all, but I just kind of want to showcase that so many people knew what was going on and what Willie was doing, but they were too scared to tell anyone as well. Another woman by the name of Lynn Ellingson headed to the farm for work because of the drugs available and money. As always, one night, Willie asked Lynn to come cruising with him so she could coax someone in and make them feel a bit more comfortable. Willie and the woman went to his room and Lynn returned to her room that was at the other end of Willie's trailer because she was living in there with him, which gross. She thought she'd heard a scream outside, so she went down to Willie's room to see if they'd heard anything. Looking out the window, she saw a light bulb on in the slaughterhouse, or slaughter barn. When she went out, she headed to the barn door where she was hit with a foul smell. The first thing she saw were some legs dangling. She called out to Willie and he came forward and moved her into the barn. They headed towards a table. Lynn, feeling sick, was dry heaving and couldn't bear to look around. All she could see were legs, toes, and red nail polish. There was hair on the table and he was cutting something, but she couldn't look, but knew this is where the pigs used to go. He told her if she was to tell anyone, she would end up on the spot next to the woman.
Friendship.
Friends. So before we dive to 2001, I know we've just gone from one extreme to holy crap, there's a body, but I kind of just wanted to give you 2 instances of the people on the farm literally seeing things, knowing what's going on, and not doing anything about it. So in 2000, Piggy's Palace was finally shut down. Remember that old place from part 1? Not too sure. It was created to be a charity, but instead it ended up being like a club or like a drug den. So a lot of downtown women would end up going there for drinks and drugs, obviously. The city even tried to get this place shut down, however it failed. And as I said, it was shut down January 2000 and the charity status was gone. So of course losing this place would hurt Willie because this was his go-to. Like, it kind of made him feel, I guess, even though he would get made fun of by his brother, it made him feel like a man. He could kind of go party even though he didn't drink. He could have women around him. Like, he just, I guess, felt a bit powerful on there. And with the police continuously looking out for what he was up to by this time, surprisingly enough, only one woman went missing. So it was almost like the women stopped disappearing while the cops were tailing Willie. In 2001, 3 women went missing at the beginning, and by June, another woman went missing, and her name was Andrea. She was staying at a hotel where one of Willie's lackeys would hang around trying to pick up women for him. Now, Andrea was on her way to getting clean, so when she went missing and searches were being done, they realised she was heading out to Port Coquitlam. Willie again? I mean, is he the killer? I do not know, guys. I do not know. Cannot say.
It's not him.
Don't think it's him. There were a few other close calls around this time, and by close I mean super close, as in hitchhiking and being picked up by Willie, and then noticing there were no door handles. Another woman was punched in the face, but got away. So he was just getting messy towards the end there, just super messy. So 2002, police are all over Willie. Remember I told you about the employee of the Picktons who came forward being like, hey, clothes and ID? Yeah, so he came forward again to be like, hey guys, Willie. Because police needed something, this employee said, well, actually, he does have some illegal firearms on the property. I could tell you where they are, and then that should give you grounds to search. So I'm like, come on, this guy's a bit of a forward thinker, isn't he? A search warrant was granted, and Willie was arrested once police arrived at his trailer. They were not expecting the trash and the filth and just the bugs and who knows what else scattered everywhere. The smell was putrid.
I don't doubt that.
Disgusting. The firearms were found along with plenty of women's clothing, IDs, some fuzzy handcuffs, zip ties, 2 dildos, a box of kitchen knives, and a gun with a dildo stretched over the barrel. An inhaler was found with the name of one of the missing women on it, and this gave the police enough to gain another search warrant. Thank goodness. Now, the search for this farm would end up being one of the largest property searches in Canadian history because, hello, a massive farm, cars being put underground, and excavators would be needed. It was going to be a huge-ass search. The investigation would end up costing close to $70 million because, as I said earlier, it required heavy machinery, conveyor belts, and soil sifters to find remains. Not one full body was found on the property either. Just fun, not so fun fact. All the bodies they found were in pieces, and it actually took 2 years to sift through mud, manure, and dirt. They found clothing, fingernails, and tiny bits of body pieces throughout. One of the officers who was used to farm work or kind of owned a farm and knew her animals went for a walk around to check on them. Unfortunately, it was as bad as you could imagine. There were sick animals, infections, dead pigs and piglets. I cannot even imagine what the team on this case went through. They even found in the slaughterhouse hooks Willie used to butcher the pigs, they found human flesh tissue and whatever else on it. Like, it was still on the hooks. So after the 2 years of searching, officers were able to identify the remains of 27 victims, which is a good number, but compared to what Willie actually got away with and some of the bodies they couldn't identify, so it's like a win, but not a win as well.
It's a half win.
Investigators would end up figuring out how Willie dismembered and got rid of his victims, and autopsies on some of the victims showed that they were butchered like pigs. This absolute POS, or piece of poop, butchered these poor women. Now, remember how I said Willie had a fair few freezers on the farm to store his meat? And because he is such a hoarder, he'd have a lot of things on top of the freezers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So police found buckets of human remains just casually sitting on top of a freezer with some stuff draped over it. One of the victim's hands and feet were found inside her skull in one of the buckets. And just in case you needed to know how horrific this man is or was, in the freezer was also a human head. So even though we kind of already said it before, he never used his own meat at the barbecues. And I'll let you do the maths, because in one of the pens, they found a victim's jawbone with a tooth still in it and just some pieces. It was at this point in writing that I realised something. So Willie is killing his victims and then cutting them up, feeding pieces to the pigs, and then taking the rest to a rendering plant. Now, the thing I just learnt is rendering plants, I know what they are. It's a place to kind of take pieces, what people don't want from the animals, that kind of thing. What I didn't think of is the part where it gets processed and used to make other products.
Mm-hmm.
So now, not only is the meat from the farm tainted, but candy, makeup products, whatever has been made from human products. No ma'am, no wonder this case took me so long to do. Even part 2 wasn't done because I could not. So who has been eating or using human remains?
And not known about it.
Yeah, I wrote that in all caps and I wanted to scream it, but I won't.
Thank you.
He's feeding people to the pigs, which is why he's not cooking his own meat, because he knows it's literally tainted. He is then giving the meat out to friends and family and selling it. And then hair and whatever is going to the rendering plant. Thankfully, 22nd of February 2002, Willie was arrested finally, as in formally arrested. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, and by 2006, the trial began for 6 counts of first-degree murder. Now, obviously, he has killed a lot more than that, but police wanted to pin him on the crimes that were most concrete with evidence. There is a tape online where Willie was placed in a cell with an undercover cop. You can find this on YouTube, and it's gross because he's talking about all the gross things he's done while he eats some form of jail slop. Like, he's literally just like shoveling it into his mouth while he just talks about really gross stuff. Willie became super chummy and opened up about how he was annoyed he only got to 49 and not the big 50. He was getting sloppy towards the end and how there will be DNA. He then stood up and walked over to the undercover officer and told him it was all thanks to the rendering plant on how he got away with it for so long. Willie also wanted to beat some of the biggest American serial killers as well. Like, he was really just gunning for that.
It's a competition, man.
Yeah, just gotta be number one. Now, I hadn't gone through it before, so I kind of thought now would be the time to go through just the victims' names. Now, remember, these are not the full 49, just the 26. I think there was originally 27 because there was a Jane Doe, but then they didn't end up actually attaching her murder to Willie. So the victims as followed: Serena Abbotsway, Mona Wilson, Jacqueline McDonald, Diane Rock, Heather Bottomley, Andrea Joesbury, Brenda Wolfe, Georgina Pappin, Patricia Johnson, Helen Hallmark, Jennifer Firminger, Heather Chinook, Tanya Hollick, Sherry Irving, Inga Hall, Cara Ellis, Andrea Borhaven, Deborah Lynn Jones, Marnie Frey, Tiffany Drew, Kerry Koski, Sarah DeFries, Cynthia Felix, Angela Jordine, Wendy Crawford, and Diana Melnick. That's not even all of them. And when you say it out loud, you're just like, holy crap. So as I said, the trial began in 2006 when Willie pleaded not guilty on the trial for 6 first-degree murders. And somehow the jury came back with not guilty for first-degree murder and only guilty for second-degree murder. How? I do not know. The judge and all of Canada was like, what the frick is going on? So they changed it to life in prison without the possibility of parole until 25 years, which was the max sentence for second degree.
That's wild.
How? How is that second degree? How? In December 2012, a report was done. There were blatant failures by police, including prejudice against sex trade workers and Indigenous women. Over 63 recommendations came from that report too. February 2024, Willie somehow became eligible for day parole, although there was no hearing that had actually been scheduled as yet. And on May 19th, 2024, Willie was attacked by another prisoner at the Port Cartier Institution. The prisoner had a history of assaulting other prisoners, and it is said that he speared Willie in the head with a broken broom-like handle. Willie was airlifted to hospital but died of complications on May 31, 2024, at the age of 74.
Hasta la vista, baby.
And that, dear mung beans, is the final part of the horrific creep that is Willie Pickton. Please do not forget to read the book by Stevie Cameron, as she goes into more detail of the victims and their families and just who they were, as well as the case in general. So yeah, disgusting.
Disgusting.
But yeah, Willie Pickton, glad he's dead. Sayonara.
Willie Pickton, wish it were fiction, but it's not. It's real life and it happened.
And on that note,
Goodbye.
goodbye.
Because you can hear it in all the...
Shush.
Fish.
Shush. Shush. Women.
Fish woman.
Sage woman. Sage woman.
Fish woman.
I am...
Oh yeah.
No.
I am...
I am about to sing to you. That did come up. Oh, no, I don't think I know some... We will get every... That's what's happening today. Okay? Yeah. Sure. I went to like breathe and I just like... No, it's dry.
I hate when my mimi is dry too.
My mimi.